basis, and this is the pattern. The same pattern that exists in Guilford County is the same pattern that exists across this nation. Individual behaviors and decisions and choices are inadequate to explain that systemic pattern. And this is one of the most complicated things for us to understand, and people are wedded to saying that black people across this country just haven't stepped up to the plate and done the right thing. There are people neglecting and abusing their children. There are parents who do not come home. There are unruly children across racial lines. But our data consistently shows in the healthcare system, in the criminal justice system, in the banking and finance, home mortgages, education, this same pattern. And these are the roots of these institutions pulling forward and giving us our data. And I hear Amos, and I know how frustrating this is, but there are people who have been hardwired around blaming children and their families for disparities. I'm not saying for actions, I'm saying for disparities. And we have got to get articulate about the difference. We are not talking, when we talk about race and racism up here, whether it's institutional or individual, we are not talking about the same thing. That's why we're so confused. It's hard for us to even interpret this data and this initiative because we are all coming at it from such a different place that we can't even have a consensus here. We can't even interpret it the same way. There are incredible cultural differences among us right here in the United States because as a black person, we have very different experiences, histories, and relationships with systems and institutions that influence our decision-making process, our problem-solving, how we cope with things, and how we manage crisis. And that is culture. It is how you live. So it is very different. And I think when we have these disparities that we have in this country, there is something wrong. And I know how complicated and how hard this is going to be. And I want to say to you, Amos, that one of the things I'm reminded of often is that, Plessy versus Ferguson was a separate but equal decision in 1896. And it took a lot of organizing and a lot of sacrifices and a lot of struggle to get to 1954 when it was challenged. But there was work being going on, so that was a 50-some-odd-year plan. And it is going to take a while for us to do this. I am not looking for the statistics to change right away, because I think when we do that, we set ourselves up, we throw it out the window, and we go right back to the same thing again. I value the stories. I value what I heard Mr. O'Donnell and Mr. Christina say today, what I heard the principals saying. Those stories are much more valuable to me than the statistics right now because they are suggesting to me that people are having a much deeper understanding of what the real problem is and that the interventions are going to come out of that understanding, but it's too new and they can lose it if we don't stick with it for a while. So we have to be patient with this, all the while knowing that they're moving towards something and we will see some results, but we're going to have to learn how to interpret those results because they're not going to come all the time in the numerical way that we're used to getting them. There's no way you can have this 400-year problem and a 12-month initiative. It's just not going to happen. And so, I applaud the superintendent. The president launched his executive order a couple of weeks ago on this very same issue. And I was so proud that our superintendent had the courage and the leadership against all of the critics and the challengers and the opponents of even examining race, of even being able to talk about it, to do this over a year ago. And so I'm going to stand behind him and this team because it is wrong. I've been on this board for 10 years, and some of you have been here longer. It is wrong to still have these outcomes. It is wrong, and it is criminal. It is wrong to do this. We have made decisions about a generation since we've been here, and it's wrong. And this is the right thing to do, and even though my life isn't in danger for doing this now like it was in the 50s and 60s, I know there are going to be ugly and bigoted comments, because I get those after these board meetings. You all might not get those about this, whether it's minority contractors or whether it's black males. But it's the right thing to do. And I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate the struggle you had. I know it hasn't been easy for you all, because you're learning too. So I appreciate that.
Let me just say this. it is not like this is new. I mean,
No.
this is nothing. We already knew this. This has been going on since there have been schools. We already know this. I mean, the choice, we don't have a choice but to wait. But at what point do we stop saying wait? I mean, we can go back 40 years and find out data that says that African-American males have different outcomes in school. I applaud the superintendent. I applaud everybody who's done anything about it. But this continuous study of the problem has not led to anything different. It was the same when I was in high school. It's the same when my father was in high school. Same when my grandfather was in school. It's the same. So, I mean, I don't see anything different. I don't see anything different other than a study to produce to say, we've got work to do. We always hear that, we've got work to do. Generations, you said yourself, generations. Meanwhile, as I've said before, you drive down South M Eugene Street and you'll see what happens when we don't do what we're supposed to do. There are young men standing out on there who have no hope, not because they can't do, but because someone has discouraged them from doing. And I don't know, Paul, who it is, if it's the family or if the systems or whoever it is, but there are young men out there with great capabilities who have not been given the chance or given the motivation to do, and our response now is let's study it some more. And they've come right through our school system. We've had them for years in our school system, and that's the result of it. We have a national star who comes through our school system that can't read.